to move really fast in one direction, or allow more information through to them so that they can learn and build themselves as people and become a self-organising team, a high-performing team. So, I'm just going to take a quick break for a moment. Just realised that it's really hot when you start talking up the room. Don't worry, I won't be taking anything else off. All right, so if we think about how teams deliver value. Now, if you think of a value stream, from someone coming up with an idea through to actually getting that built and tested and into production and start actually reaping the rewards from building this, so actually getting the dollars back. Teams go through a whole lot of process. They do this build and test, and they analyse a problem, they come up with stories, they write them, they build and test them, get UX, and the things, they do lots of things, but the main thing I want to focus on today is they get context. So they expose themselves to the bigger picture, and they understand the inputs and all the influencing factors. They create a bunch of assumptions. So as they're learning about the problem space that they're doing, they look at risk points and they find they make assumptions as to what's going to affect them in their delivery. They then go through and actually validate these assumptions. Now that's in terms of actually building software, doing spikes, and through this process they validate these assumptions, and what that does at the end is it creates a learning loop. Now this learning loop is vital to great teams. They organise their work in a way that they can go through multiple learning cycles in short periods of time and learn, and through that be able to add value and build quickly. What's important to this, of course, is input from the outside. So as the Scrum Master, you need to allow the right contextual information into the team to allow them to validate these assumptions so they can do this learning loop and progress. Now, self-organisation is core to high-performing teams. You need to put them into an environment where they can self-organise and be autonomous and maximise this learning ability that they have. They need to be able to deliver in small increments. They naturally organise themselves and plan out their work so that they can they make these assumptions, validate the assumptions in small, quick increments, do lots and lots of learning, particularly early on in the project. At least that's what you try to do with agile projects, is to de-risk it by doing lots of learning and getting lots of feedback early on, and de-risking by looking at all your problem areas and things like that. Now, again, of course, key to that is learning from the outside. There's a lot of noise can come in from the outside, and the iteration manager needs to protect the team from the random noise and filter through the contextual information that's really important. Conversely, you don't want to shield them from important information. You want to make sure that they understand the important information that can come through. So to encourage this whole learning cycle, you want to try and amplify learning. And you also want to try and reduce the disruptions that they have. Now, software development is a continuous learning process, so it's vitally important that you keep this cycle going of learning and also of the information that's passed in. So how do we amplify learning? By giving the teams contextual information and also domain knowledge. So the more they understand of the big picture, so seeing the whole, it's great, it helps them progress. And also understanding the domain and the problem space they're working in. Vital to the team, self-organisation and autonomy. Agile teams need self-organisation. If you put them into a bucket where you tell them what to do, they're not going to explore. Short inspect and adapt cycles, of course. This goes back to the core of the Agile Manifesto. And again, in these short inspect and adapt cycles, you need direct customer feedback. And again, this comes back to how much the iteration manager allows the teams, people to, the information, make sure it gets filtered properly. So things that disrupt learning, command and control behaviours is a terrible one. So command and control behaviours actively discourage innovation and learning. They, tell you what to do, tell you how to do it, tell you when you should do it. They take all innovation and thinking out of the team's mind. There's a study done recently that actually showed teams' IQ actually drops temporarily during in strong command and control environments. So if you want a high-performing team, you need to open them up and allow and get rid of these command and control behaviours. Context switching and interruptions are two of the other key problems that can disrupt learning. So this is context switching, multitasking, those sorts of things. So just how bad is multitasking? So if we think in the industry as a whole, so in the IT industry, say, as a whole, how long do you think, on average, it would take until you get interrupted from the tasks that you're doing? So is it 30 minutes? Less than 30 minutes? Who thinks less than 5? We've got someone out here who's on the extreme. There was a study recently done by Gloria Mark, research last year and published this year, which looked at the IT industry as a whole, and she actually found that the average time before interruption is 1 minute 15 seconds. Now, some environments are obviously much better than that. Others are, well, I don't know if you can get much worse than that, but that was the studies of her research. It was 1 minute 15 seconds. I had to write that as with minute and second in there because I think people would normally get confused and think it's an hour and 15 minutes. But what makes this even worse is that it took roughly 25 minutes for people to actually resume their task after they'd been interrupted. So the effects of that are fairly obvious. You get considerable drop in productivity. This is a separate study that showed these, but 40% drop in productivity, 50% longer to complete tasks, and 50% more errors caused. So that was just a little side thing just on how important it is to protect the team from multitasking and interruptions. Really important if you want the team to deliver quickly. Now, teams are constantly influenced, and you want influence into the teams. It's how they gain the contextual knowledge, how they get feedback. So there's both positive and negative influences that come into a team. Some of them you want to allow through and make sure that the team gets this, and some of them you want to try and stop or move aside and to a more appropriate time for the team. Some examples of that: so feedback from customers, feedback from the business people, from the project manager, from salespeople, architecture. All these things are important. And it's getting that right balance between the positive ones and the distractive ones. Excited customers is another. So have you ever had customers who are so excited that you can deliver software so fast and produce these wonderful outcomes that they start coming to you all the time? Like every hour, they'll come to you and say, hey, I've got this great new idea. It's a new flashy light thing that we want to put on. And that can be really distractive. So you want to try and plan in times when it's appropriate to get that input and that feedback from your customer. Politics and personalities. Another typical one. Even in IT, we can't get away from this. They're always going to influence you, and there's not much you can do about it. So you've got to try and control it and minimise the impacts. So that's it for teams for the moment. I want to talk now about environments. So this is the environments that the team operates within. There's different challenges and opportunities based on different types of environments. So you have large environments, small environments, mid-sized environments. So looking firstly at corporates. Generally, corporates, there's a lot more constraints and those constraints generally are more outside the control of the iteration manager, and also outside the influence often of the iteration manager. There's a lot of things that are more locked in, defined, predefined process and things. There's problems you have around governance, around access to customers, like direct access to customers. How many people who work in a corporate actually get to talk to a direct customer on any regular basis or at all? How often do you even get to talk to your product management, and can you actually co-locate and sit with your product management so that you can get fast feedback from them? In larger environments, you get more bureaucracy, politics, management overhead. There's various other problems like that. And the result of those things is it can limit the team's ability to be autonomous, can limit their ability to make and validate those assumptions, harder to gain feedback quickly, harder to get the short and spec adapt cycles. So what that ends up doing is eroding the learning loop that the teams have and their ability to quickly respond to change. Those problems are not isolated to corporates. Small companies like startups, for example, also have problems. They may not have the same types of problems, but they do have other problems. So more interruptions are often more common in small environments. So I've worked in some startups that have only had, from 3 people up to others that have got maybe 2 or 3 teams of people. Now, those teams, because they're in a small startup, often have to do support work as well. So those teams are often trying to go ahead and build products, but have to keep stopping what they're doing and doing support activities on a daily basis. So those kind of disruptions slow the team down. They can have problems with, so that causes things like more interruptions and context switching problems. They can have problems with long-term vision problems. So these, startups are designed so you can adapt really quickly. So you get more input or feedback from the market as to what you're doing, and instead of driving that way, you turn and you go somewhere else. Now, unless you've got good, strong product management in place, the vision of the product can become diluted, and the teams need that vision to make sure they're building the right thing and going in the right direction. And if you're always chopping and changing based on the market, then you can suffer from that as well. Better at dealing with these kind of problems are mid-sized companies. Now, these are companies that sit under the Dunbar number. So you're probably familiar with the Dunbar number, which is the number of people you can have meaningful relationships with. And I'm talking in a business sense there. These companies like Spotify are a really good example. They've got a maximum size for their tribes of 100 people. That's what they consider to be the Dunbar number for them. But it's when they get above that size, they split into 2. Now, what they're doing is trying to reduce the overheads and reduce the overheads and constraints and governance processes that are required in larger organisations. So keep it small, keep it adaptable and open to change. And those mid-sized companies are better positioned to deal with the types of problems you have both in the small companies and the large companies. The iteration manager needs to be able to navigate these various environments. In corporates, you have problems with politics and stakeholders and architecture and constraints and release processes and governance and blah, 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 and writing reports and, all painful. But the IM has to know how to navigate that. Similarly, in small companies, you have more commercial pressures. Particularly with startups, you might not have much funding. Do you know if you're actually going to be here in 2 months' time? Is the company going to exist in 2 months' time if you don't deliver working software really quickly? So you have to be mindful of those kind of pressures. Target customer management. Again, with small companies, you can have some key customers who will pay all the bills and allow your product development to keep going, but you really have to look after them. So the success in all these types of environments has a lot to do with the relationships that the IM has and their ability to shield the team, protect the team in the right moments. So I've talked about teams and now a bit about the environments that the teams operate within. So now we have to look at the balance So this is the balance between delivering really quickly, so protecting your team in a nice isolated bubble and allowing them to deliver really quickly, and exposing the team to more information and more interactions to allow them to develop as people and to develop as a team into a high-performing, self-organised team. So getting that balance right between quick delivery and team development is the challenge, and it's strongly influenced by the amount that you protect them from the outside world. So probably a lot of you here are parents. Being an iteration manager is a bit like being a parent. You want to stop them from being killed, right? But a few grazed knees along the way helps them learn not to kill themselves. So it's important that you expose them to the outside world, or else they'll never learn to operate by themselves, and they'll be they'll end up in chaos. So we need to balance the team's need to explore, to learn, to master what they love, and to have pride in what they do, to become great craftsmen, or master builders, maybe is another word you could use, thanks to the Lego movie. However, there's commercial realities in the world. We have to deliver working software quickly so the business can make money, and that's what the business exists, is to make money. So we can't just build a wonderful product and put it on the shelf, this beautiful architected, handcrafted product, and put it on the shelf. We need to actually get the software out the door and get money coming in. So achieving this is a key for an IM. So we have to get the right position and understand the position that we're operating within and the objectives of the project or the release that you're looking at. So first we'll have a look at team maturity. So how mature are the team's practices, their behaviours, both internally and externally? How good are they at learning, unlearning and relearning? How good are they actually at delivering and responding to change? How quickly can they pivot? We need to understand the organisational maturity. So is the organisation actually ready to be a high-performing organisation? What's the mindset of the organisation? Are they open-minded? Are they inquisitive? Are they keen at seeking and trying out new things, new ways of working? You need to understand that. Is there trust and collaboration? Or is it just ass covering? And you need to understand the delivery objectives. So that's the objectives for this current project or release that you're working on, and also looking over the next 6 to 18 months. You know, what are the short to mid-term goals? Are they really time critical? Are there commercial pressures? Are we trying to release a new product out to the market earlier than our competition? Is it a pet project of the CEO? So you have to understand all of these factors when you're trying to work out how much you should focus on the team building and improving as a high-performing team, or on actually just getting the product out the door really quickly. Now, we want to set the balance point. So we understand the teams, understand the commercial realities that are surrounding them and the drivers and the objectives of the business, and how much we should protect them and how much we should let through. So what do we filter? Good thing to filter and stop getting in is completely negative influence. So I'm sure a lot of you have been involved in projects where the sponsor really doesn't even like what you're doing. They committed to something, 12 months ago, and since then things have changed and they're locked in and they hate it. And you don't want them telling that to the team. I hate what you're doing. I'm just going to shelve this as soon as you go live with it. I just need to make it go live so that we can write it off as CapEx. You don't want to allow through bullying or overly aggressive product owners, project managers, stakeholders, salesmen always coming in saying, oh, can you just slip this little feature in, I really need it, so make this sale, blah, blah, blah. You want to try and reduce those kind of influences and impacts. Waste. So there's a lot of external wastes for the team. So external meetings, reports that they have to write, things like that. Can you reduce those or group them together in some way to make them less impact into the team? Interruptions, key one. We talked about that one before. Again, what to allow through. So, context. Context is king. Self-organising teams can't live without it. They need that bigger picture. They need to understand the vision of what they're building so that they can make decisions on what they're building. Allowing them to feel a bit of the pain that customers feel is really good. So when they're coming up with the next features or understanding how they could solve a problem, they keep these things in their mind and understand how they can make them better. Similarly, for pain that the business is feeling, because they're users of your application as well. We want to make sure that there's constant, close contact with the customers and the business. You want to meet them face to face. You want to really understand what's going on with them. And just another note, outgoing comms, you don't want the iteration manager to be the only voice of the team. You want the rest of the team actually out there spruiking and being involved. So, just to recap, it's not as simple as what I originally learnt in Scrum, which is the role of the iteration manager is to protect the team. You have to consider the teams, the environment which they're operating in, and also how to set a balance point so that the teams can focus on delivering really quickly or developing into a high-performing team. Thank you. Questions?
Sorry,
David?
Quick question. You talked about the problems of interruptions, and some of those interruptions are, of course, electronic emails and so on. I'm getting the sense that the new generations coming up are much better at dealing with those interruptions. Is that the sense that you're getting?
Interesting. I also saw an infographic a few days ago on people check their phone, I think it's 500 times a day on average. And this is a study that was published, I think it was about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And I'm sure nowadays there's a lot more. So there's constant interruption from people, checking their mobile phones and devices. Emails aren't quite so bad. You can turn emails off a lot more easily, but having your phone nearby, there's always this constant pressure to look at it. So yeah, there's definitely a source of context switching problem. I'd encourage people to get rid of them while they're trying to focus. I mean, you can do Pomodoro. No, not Pomodoro. Yes, Pomodoro. Where you focus on working for, say, half an hour or 25 minutes and then have a break and do all of your multitasking things during that break and then go back to doing another task. So
I might look at that, because I did suggest to a group of very young developers, turn your phones off, turn your email off. As a developer, I used to go into the server room and close the damn door.
Yep.
And they looked at me like I was a dinosaur. But actually, your suggestion is excellent.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's becoming more and more problematic, I think, with a lot more social media and things. Another couple of minutes, anyone?
The point about the aggressive product owners or salespeople. What's the effective way to deal with that?
Okay, there's a few things. One is scheduling meetings for them. So, and when I say scheduling meetings, I mean a regular cadence meeting. So, for example, having we have a weekly product backlog grooming session. So, an hour and a half every Wednesday, Thursday, whichever day, where we get together with the product owner and basically try and discuss everything we're looking at. So it's looking at roadmap planning as well as next iteration planning, what's coming up, what ideas do they have, what do they want to feed in and change. But having a regular cycle for that.
Okay, we've got that as well.
Yeah.
It's helped, but
Sure. I guess it's probably where some influence comes in. You have to have the discussion with them to say the team needs to be isolated to develop and go fast. So it's getting that balance between keeping them isolated and allowing them just to go fast in one direction versus the constant churn and information.
I'm working in a 20-year-old startup, effectively.
Yeah. It's an interesting challenge. Maybe one more.
How would you recommend a team deal with a team member who's performing badly? Let's say they only do 3 hours of work a day because the rest of the time they're just being lazy, organising travel and trips.
Okay. We had a similar problem with a different team recently where we had a similar kind of problem. They approached it by basically having a closed-door meeting with the entire team, but just the team, and bringing up in a way that everyone needs to pull their weight and not pointing fingers at anyone, but having a, basically saying, look, this is a self-organising team, you have to all play your part and do these things. And some discussion arose, and then out of that, I started saying, well, you've got to actually be in the office for at least between the hours of 10 and 4, and various things, and brought up examples where people were not really playing to the team rules, but not. I guess the way that we approached it was actually having that conversation in a more open forum and not really pointing a finger at anyone, just saying, how do we all want to operate as a team? How do we want to, what are the rules? What's the charter by which we want to live? So how does this team see itself? So I don't know if that's an option maybe. There's always direct confrontation with the problem as well. This is a bit more challenging. I think we're almost out of time. I think the next session starts in about 4 minutes. So if you have any other questions, come and see me afterwards. Be happy to have a chat. Thanks again.